Okay guys, welcome back to another video. Today I thought it'd be fun to kind of go through my edit and my process, my workflow in Lightroom. I wanted to go through one photo that I took in Finland in 2024. I loved a lot of the content I took there. It was kind of hard to choose a photo out of my whole catalog to show you guys, but I want to do just one photo from that trip. So let's dive into Lightroom. Okay, so this is the photo I decided to choose. I really love this photo for two reasons. One, it was when we were hiking. I had my camera on my capture clip, so it sits right here on my backpack strap. And we were just hiking up and I turned around and I saw this view. It was freezing. I think it was like minus 25 Celsius. The lighting was quite good, but I thought that there was so much contrast in this photo. So kind of editing it was a little difficult in my opinion. It wasn't like a perfect sunset or a perfect sunrise. But this time of year in Finland, the sun is really low. The light is just good like most of the time when you do get sun. So let's kind of get into it. This is what it looked like after my edit. This is what I've posted on my Instagram. You might have seen, maybe not. If you haven't, there it is. So that's what it looked like before, and that's after. You can definitely tell I made the shadows look very blue, and that's just kind of my style. I kind of like to show the shadows being a bit cooler, and then the highlights, especially in this photo, I like to be a bit warmer, just to kind of give more of contrast and more depth to the photo. But so let's reset this whole photo. Okay, so let's just start from scratch here. So the first thing I usually do is I go to this crop tool up here, and I choose the aspect ratio of 4:3, because this is the new aspect ratio that Instagram and a bunch of social medias are starting to adapt to over the 4:5. So this gives you more real estate on the feed, which is really nice. So I usually do that. So I kind of find the framing I like. I might angle it to be a bit more straighter because I kind of took it not so straight. Usually I'll use like trees or something in the foreground that looks straight to me and kind of line up that way. So that looks pretty good, I think. I might change that a bit. See, that still looks kind of crooked to me. So it's like that. So that's the first thing I usually do. Second thing I usually do is I like to play with the white balance. You can find lots of videos on white balance. I actually like to use this as like a tool to kind of create a feel for the image. I just kind of like using this as like almost like a coloring aspect to editing photos. So I just use this little dropper, choose somewhere on the screen that would be white, and we'll start there. So next thing I'll do is I'll play with the exposure. I actually did kind of overexpose the sky quite a bit, and it was just because we were hiking and I just did a quick shot, but I did kind of overexpose it. So let's leave this exposure where it is. And then with contrast, I like to add about 15 to 30% plus of contrast. So let's go to 20. And then for highlights, I'm gonna bring the highlights all the way down just to kind of get some more information in the background there. As I said earlier, I did overexpose this. So luckily I do have a very good camera. That dynamic range is very good. So I can definitely still pull a lot of information back even though I overexposed it. Let's go to shadows. I like to bring up the shadows just to bring up like the dark areas in this front ground area here. And then the whites is kind of acts like highlights sort of. So anything in the image that's white. So for this, I am gonna pull it back a little just to bring more details back into the whites and not be so overexposed. And then blacks, this is where it kind of comes more alive, adds more contrast to the image, more depth. So I like to do quite a bit of the black. So -50 for this image. And these are just like a basic edit so far. Kind of play with the basics on the right here at first. And then as I go through the rest of the editing tools, I'll kind of tweak everything as I go and see what I like. So that's good. I usually don't touch the vibrance or saturation maybe till the end. I go to tone curve. If you know anything about tone curve, you've probably maybe heard of the technique of a S-curve. I kind of do an S-curve, but not really. So in the bottom half here, this is your blacks, and I'm gonna push up the blacks a bit because I kind of like to give like a faded look to my blacks. I don't like my blacks to be like solid black. So this kind of helps me with that effect. So yeah, I do that. I do a very small amount. So like say like that. And then usually if I didn't put a little dot here, take that away, it would be like that. But I put a dot in between those two and I kind of drop this down a bit so it's not so faded and it kind of brings some more of the darker blacks back into the image. And then at the top here, I do a very slight curve down just to crush the whites a bit more. So I do a very basic S-curve. I don't really do anything in the middle. I'll just show you, for example, like when you play with these, they kind of mess with the midtones, shadows, highlights, the whites. So I kind of keep that like that. Something I've always done and I'll probably always stick to. So I don't touch anything else there. And then I go to color grading. I do not touch midtones. When I first started editing, there wasn't even a midtones option. So I just generally stay in the shadows and and the highlights. So in shadows, not kidding you, every single photo that you see me edit and post, I do the exact same settings every single time. So my hue, I put 45, which is kind of like in the orange reddish area. And then saturation, I'll play with this. For each photo, I'll do it differently. So I'll bump this up 10. Usually I do like around 10. I don't go crazy on this because I like to keep the image as much as what I saw in person as possible. But obviously I'm gonna enhance that a little bit based on the edit that you've seen of mine. But so the highlights, same thing. I always do 195, and that's kind of like in this bluish, light blue agua area. And I always do 195, like I said, and then saturation, I'll play around with that. So I'm gonna, I'll do about 10 as well there. So detail. In sharpening, I add about 65 amount of sharpening. It just brings in the sharpening a bit more. So if you go inwards, let's go back to what it was at. You can kind of see the details a little, not super crisp. So I add about 65 and it adds just a bit more sharpness to the photo, but not too much. I don't like my images to be super sharp in general. I kind of like to have very dreamy look to my photos. Most of the time I do shoot like in a low f-stop. I always shoot 2.8. So most of the time, or f4. So after that, I leave this lens correction on. It automatically defaults to the camera and lenses that I use. So I just keep that on. It kind of fixes it so I can show you what it looked like before. Kind of gets rid of that like fisheye look a little bit and then makes it more clean, and yeah, it's just nice. I just kind of keep that on. Transform, I don't touch. Lens blur, don't touch. That's a new feature on Lightroom. Effects, I do not touch that either. And then calibration, I do not touch as well. I just keep it at current version. So this is the image so far. It's kind of a basic edit compared to what it was before. I'll show you what it was when I edit it. See, the difference is quite different, but we'll get there. So that's where we're at right now. It's pretty warm in comparison to my previous edit. So I am gonna go back and kind of crush down the temperature so it's a bit cooler around there. And then I did miss, the mixer went right over that. So the color mixer, the hue basically changes the color on this wheel here. So if I pull the blues this way, it's gonna be super greeny and agua, if I'm saying that right. And then super like purple and blue. So for this, I'm gonna kind of drop it down a little bit because I want it to be a bit more like a lightish blue and not so much like a purpley blue. So I'm gonna do like there. This one I'm not gonna touch. There's not many other colors in here other than like orange and blue. So for this one, I'm gonna maybe make that yellow in the background, the sunset, or the sun hitting the trees there. I'm gonna kind of bring this down a bit to be a bit more kind of reddy orange, kind of like that. And this one effect. Sometimes it's really useful just to do that. Just go to each color and see what it affects. So that one, I'm gonna bring it down a bit also into like the orangey area, just to like kind of bring out that sky part there. See how it's like pink now? I don't want it to be that crazy, but just like a little bit just to show like some more color in the sky. And then I'm gonna go to saturation, and if you don't know what saturation is, basically just makes the colors super vibrant. So I'm gonna bring this up a bit, definitely to like 50. And then yellow, it's also affecting the sky a bit. So I'm gonna do that because I wanna see color in the sky. That looks nice. And then blue, I'm also gonna bring this up. You can go all the way that way or take it all away. But for me, I just like, in my mind, when I look back on it, I just see like really blue shadows. And that's kind of like how I see the image. Luminance is bringing the color to be basically lighter or darker, in short. So this one I'm not gonna, I'll maybe bring this down a little bit just to make that orange pop a bit more detail. Yellow, too much, maybe like my 5, I think I like that. Blue, I might actually bring this up a touch just to not make it so dark in the blue area. Pretty good to me. Saturation, I actually might bring up a bit more to like, actually I liked it at 50. So next thing up here, these things you might have seen remove. You can remove stuff if you find something's distracting. Sometimes I'll use this just to clean up like little areas, like even this I could clean up. But this image, I didn't basically clean up anything. I kind of liked everything that was going on. So these are the masks. I find the masks really bring your image to life a bit, creates more depth, and you can really play around with the image more. So the first thing I usually do is I click this linear gradient and I add this to the bottom of my images, and I like to darken the edges a little bit, just so it kind of draws your eye away from this area, because I feel like it's not super important. So making that a bit darker, your eye kind of draws up to the moon more. So I do about, I'd say about that much is probably good. And then because the background's still kind of blown out, I'll take this radial gradient, sorry. And I'm gonna just make a big circle around here. And basically, if you don't know what a mask is, it will affect only that area that's red right now. So when I create a mask, it's only gonna affect that area. Same thing as before when we're editing, this menu on the right will pop up where you can kind of play with the exposure, contrast, highlights, shadows, whites, blacks, etc. So for this, because the moon's kind of blown out a little bit, I'm gonna bring down the highlights some more, just so I can see more of that area and kind of bring more detail back. And then I think I'll even maybe I'll zoom in on the moon. So same thing, it's another filter. So I'm using the brush to create my own mask. So I'm just gonna brush the moon here. Yeah, that looks good. And then I'm gonna bring down the highlights to kind of bring back some of the detail if I can. Maybe the exposure will help that a little bit. So there you go, you're seeing a bit more of the moon. I'll add some clarity to that just so it pops a bit more. Clarity is kind of like sharpening, so let's add some clarity. That looks nice. I think the moon looks too yellow now just because of that. So I'm gonna go up to the temperature and bring down the temperature so it's more of a white instead of that yellowish. Okay, so that looks pretty good to me. I might just go in here and do some final adjustments. I'll maybe make it a bit brighter. Won't go into too much detail for the histogram. I can get into the detail about that another time. Bumping this up a bit to there. And then drop down the shadows maybe a bit, add some more black into that. So that looks pretty good to me. I would say it's pretty much done. I might add like a touch of saturation to it. But I really love this photo. I think I'm super glad I had the capture clip on and my camera was on my chest and I was able to just take it off while I was hiking and turn around and snap this. But I think that's a pretty good image there. I would say it's pretty much done. Let's see how I compared to my edit before. It's probably pretty similar. So that was it before we started. From when I've exported, that's what it looked like. And then after, so it's pretty similar. I'm pretty impressed with how I made it look so similar. If you want me to do more breakdowns like this, maybe go into more detail, I just want to kind of do a really quick edit just to show you kind of like what I'm doing. And I'd say a lot of the techniques I do in this video, I do for every single photo. I'm super basic with my edits. I try to be, and I think I let nature speak for itself. So hope you guys enjoyed this video and I will see you in the next one.